Thank you for listening to Depictions Media Radio. Welcome to Policy and Rights, the show about government policy and human rights. Welcome back to Policy and Rights here on Depictions Media Radio. I'm your host, Michael Clogs. And attendance at Russia Day by members of the current Liberal government at the Russian embassy. In the midst of sanctions and other things that have been levied against Russia because of their truthfulness and war against Ukraine, while Canada is and the people of Canada, all Canadians are trying to stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. Was that such a wise move? Well, we're going to hear statements about that. We're also going to hear about why there have been so many delays in passports. One family that I know of, they have been waiting for over 6 months for a passport for a simple trip to Hawaii from Calgary to Hawaii, and they had to wait all the way till the last minute to actually get their passports for their children to be able to take this trip. Along with that, other travel restrictions and everything are going to be talked about in this next segment by the Liberals, and we'll hear comments from the Conservatives and NDP representatives. But most of all, we wanted to hear from Mélanie Joly about, one, travel, and two, what is going on with relationships with Russia and Ukraine, and how Canada is working to help bring the war in Ukraine to an end. So let's listen to what was said in this next press conference.
The reality is this should never have happened, and this will not happen again. I'm the minister, and the buck stops here. And so I share the frustration and the anger of Canadians regarding this issue. Our intention since the beginning, and our intention has been to suffocate the Putin regime and to isolate it diplomatically, economically, and politically. So we'll continue to do that, because meanwhile Ukrainians are fighting and dying in Ukraine.
The reality is it did happen though. So what went wrong? Was there no corrective sent to Global Affairs to not attend events like this at the Russian embassy, or?
Listen, I had a conversation with my deputy minister this morning. Clearly the goal is that it doesn't happen again. And like I said, I'm the I'm the minister. Mais la directive, elle est claire. C'est-à-dire que, premièrement, ça n'aurait jamais dû arriver. Deuxièmement, un petit peu de respect pour les francophones, merci. Donc, premièrement, ça n'aurait jamais dû arriver. Deuxièmement, ça n'arrivera plus. Troisièmement, notre intention a été claire depuis le début, c'est-à-dire de suffoquer le régime Poutine. Alors, je vais continuer à exercer mes tâches et à conduire, dans le fond, mes fonctions avec la même détermination que ça a été le cas depuis le 24 février.
Mais est-ce qu'il n'y a pas une valeur à maintenir un dialogue avec la Russie? Parce que c'est ce que certains en politique étrangère disent, c'est que oui, c'est vrai qu'en ce moment, peut-être que pour beaucoup de gens, la Russie c'est l'ennemi, mais il y a une valeur à maintenir ce dialogue-là et peut-être même à participer à ce genre d'événement. Qu'est-ce que vous répondez à ça?
Il y a une valeur à avoir une ambassadrice à Moscou. Et c'est pourquoi j'ai rencontré ce matin notre ambassadrice à Moscou pour comprendre exactement ce qui se passe sur le terrain, comprendre c'est quoi la réaction du peuple russe, qu'est-ce qui se passe, oui, à Moscou et dans les grandes villes, mais aussi dans les régions du pays. Et savoir comment la propagande de Vladimir Poutine a de l'impact sur sa population. Et donc, ça a été une bonne conversation.
Did you know that an official was going to attend this reception before the reception happened? Were you aware?
I think you asked the same question I just answered.
I know, but you didn't answer it directly, Minister. That's why I'm asking again.
L'affaire mondiale a une fête organisée par l'ambassade russe à Ottawa. Votre réaction par rapport à ça, est-ce que vous trouvez que c'est une bonne idée?
Vous savez, vous avez des mots qui sont très intéressants dans la question. Premièrement, je crois que sur le plan diplomatique, il faut toujours maintenir un lien entre les échelons supérieurs. Mais là, on ne parle pas d'un lien diplomatique, on ne parle pas d'un lien qui vise à résoudre un conflit, on parle d'assister à une fête. Et assister à une fête, dans les circonstances, c'est totalement inacceptable. C'est pas ce à quoi on s'attend de la part de fonctionnaires, de hauts fonctionnaires d'affaires mondiales. Vous savez, c'est une question de jugement à un moment donné. Mais quand l'appareil, comme tel, émet pas ce jugement-là général, bien, il peut arriver des choses comme ça. Alors, je crois que c'était totalement déplacé. C'est pas une chose qu'on devrait reproduire. On devrait tirer des enseignements de ça.
Mais en même temps, est-ce qu'il n'y a pas... Parce qu'il y a beaucoup de gens qui disent, oui, mais il faut quand même maintenir le dialogue avec nos ennemis.
Oui.
Il faut maintenir la diplomatie avec nos ennemis. Et ça inclut des événements avec lesquels on n'est peut-être pas d'accord idéologiquement, mais ça fait partie du jeu. Et on le fait avec d'autres pays, je pense à l'Arabie Saoudite.
Oui. Bien, mon premier point était, on doit maintenir un lien. Clairement, parce que si on veut passer un message, si on veut résoudre un conflit, on doit avoir un lien de communication. Mais je ne crois pas qu'aller célébrer une fête russe, le jour de la fête russe dans un cocktail, ce soit la meilleure des décisions. Est-ce que c'est la pire? Moi, je la trouve pas très bonne, honnêtement. Mais c'est pas parce qu'on doit rompre le lien. Le lien doit exister, mais je pense pas qu'il devrait être de cette nature-là.
Êtes-vous surpris d'entendre Mme Joly dire condamner ça de A à Z?
Ben,
alors que c'est en fond une branche de son ministère. Êtes-vous surpris qu'elle n'ait pas été mise au courant?
Ben, le ministre ne sait pas toujours tout dans un environnement, mais par contre, je vous dirais qu'à un échelon comme celui-là, je pense que ces choses-là auraient dû se discuter d'avance, ça doit être su. Mme Joly, c'est sa deuxième réaction. Hein. La première était plus mièvre. La deuxième a été « je condamne fermement », mais je pense qu'ils se sont rendus compte que c'était indéfendable. On tentait de justifier l'injustifiable. Ça ne justifie pas cette présence-là.
Donc, pour vous, c'est quoi? Il va y avoir une directive qui vient d'en haut par rapport à ce genre d'événement?
Bien, deux choses à voir. Hein. Une directive, c'est clair. On doit s'assurer qu'elle est comprise, qu'elle est connue, qu'elle est appliquée. Mais, deuxièmement, je pense que quand on est au plus haut niveau, dans les grands échelons, dans un ministère, on a comme critère d'avoir du jugement. Et puis, ce jugement-là, remarquez une chose. Si personne l'exerce autour de vous, là, ben, on va faire comme les autres. Moi, je pense qu'il y a une responsabilité ministérielle là-dedans parce que l'exemple n'a peut-être pas été donné, simplement. Je vous en prie. Merci.
Réaction à cet autre fonctionnaire qui est allé à une réception à l'ambassade de Russie. Vous en pensez quoi?
Écoutez, on parle d'un conflit qui perdure depuis plus de 100 jours. On parle d'une situation très tendue entre la Russie et le Canada. Et on essaie de nous faire croire qu'il n'y a pas personne à Affaires mondiales Canada qui a approuvé la présence d'une haute fonctionnaire à cette cérémonie à l'ambassade russe. C'est assez incroyable ce qui s'est passé là. C'est pas croyable, c'est pas crédible comme explication. La ministre a beau dire qu'elle condamne complètement cette présence-là. Il y a quelqu'un dans ce ministère qui a autorisé la présence d'une haute fonctionnaire à l'ambassade de Russie et c'est déplorable. Ça n'aurait jamais dû arriver.
Pourquoi?
Parce que ça fait des mois qu'on demande à isoler davantage le régime de Poutine. On demande que le plus de pays possible s'assurent que ce pays-là soit isolé sur la scène internationale. La Russie qui, en ce moment, à cause de ses actions illégales en Ukraine, fait en sorte de priver des dizaines de pays des grains nécessaires pour leur survie, qui va créer une grave crise dans le monde, qui fait une guerre qui a tué des centaines de civils, des milliers de civils en Ukraine. Donc, je ne peux pas concevoir que le Canada ait participé à une fête festive à l'ambassade de la Russie.
Mme Joly aurait dû savoir. Elle condamne aujourd'hui, mais est-ce qu'elle aurait dû savoir?
Non seulement elle aurait dû savoir, elle aurait dû et elle doit prendre l'entière responsabilité de la présence de cette haute fonctionnaire à l'ambassade de la Russie.
vous entendre sur un autre sujet, juste peut-être de le faire ici, là, un petit peu en retard. Les masques, vous en pensez quoi? Les masques dans les avions, obligatoires, dans les trains aussi, l'obligation de démontrer qu'on est pleinement vacciné. Vous en pensez quoi?
C'est depuis le mois de février que les conservateurs réclament la levée des mesures sanitaires fédérales. Compte tenu de l'évolution de la COVID partout dans le monde, plusieurs experts se sont levés au cours des dernières semaines pour dire que l'obligation vaccinale dans les transports publics n'a pas de justification scientifique. Ça fait des semaines qu'on demande au ministre de la Santé de nous mettre sur la table ces justifications scientifiques. Il est incapable de le faire. Donc, effectivement, qu'on continue de considérer que c'est une mesure qui est inutile et qui contribue pas à améliorer l'état de santé des Canadiens.
Et à ceux qui disent qu'on est encore en pandémie, regardez le premier ministre, il a contracté la COVID-19, ça prouve, diront certains, qu'on a besoin encore de ça.
Ben écoutez, les transports, on vient de lever les obligations de porter un masque dans les transports publics en Ontario. On va le faire sous peu au Québec. Il y a des experts de santé publique qui disent qu'on n'a plus besoin de porter les masques dans les transports publics quand on est du côté provincial. On fait le contraire du côté fédéral. Donc, il y a une science qui a raison, puis il y a une autre science qui est plus politique que médicale. Je pense que de poser la question, c'est y répondre. Présentement, M. Trudeau entretient la crise de la COVID en maintenant en place ces mesures-là, alors que les experts partout dans le monde pensent que c'est le temps d'apprendre à vivre avec la COVID. Malheureusement, pour le premier ministre, je lui souhaite un prompt rétablissement, mais c'est pas en maintenant les mesures qu'on va maintenir et aider les Canadiens à passer à travers cette crise-là.
C'est purement politique, selon vous, la décision de M. Trudeau de ne pas encore avoir levé les...
Ben, il n'a pas été capable de démontrer scientifiquement, par écrit, pourquoi au fédéral, on doit maintenir des mesures comme celle-là, tandis que toutes les provinces ont levé et la majorité des pays dans le monde lèvent les mesures restrictives par rapport à la COVID. Donc, si juste le Canada le fait, je vois pas d'autre chose qu'une justification politique.
Merci, M. Berthold. Merci.
Hello, everybody. We're seeing Canadians, and I've just come back from my riding, that are really struggling with the cost of living. It's skyrocketing. This government seems to be moving in the wrong direction. We're seeing clawbacks on things like employment insurance and child tax credits. It's just showing appallingly bad judgment at a time when so many Canadians are struggling. What the NDP and what Jagmeet Singh have been proposing are things like increasing the GST rebate so that families can have more money in their pockets at this critical time. Alors, je viens juste d'arriver de mon comté et je vois comment les gens sont en train vraiment de faire face au coût de la vie montante. Et on voit un gouvernement qui va dans la mauvaise direction. Qu'est-ce qu'ils ont fait? C'est de couper, d'enlever de l'argent pour l'assurance emploi, pour l'allocation familiale, à une période de temps où les gens ont besoin de cet argent-là. Et l'MPD et Jagmeet Singh proposent des mesures comme d'augmenter le TPS, le remboursement du TPS pour que les familles ont plus d'argent dans leur poche à ce temps critique. Alors, avec ça, je suis prêt à répondre à vos questions.
We're nearing the end of this session. What are you hoping to see the government get through the House before it passes?
Well, we really wanted to make sure that the Budget Implementation Act went through. That's part of the confidence and supply agreement that Jagmeet Singh and the NDP signed. We wanted to make sure that the provisions for putting in place dental care for the first time in Canadian history for children, making sure that we have substantial increases in monies for housing at a time when the affordable housing, the lack of affordable housing is a huge crisis for Canadians. So that was an important component. For the next week and a half, we're focused on the cost of living and the fact that this government hasn't responded in an adequate way, and we're going to continue to push those points.
Sur la participation d'une employée d'Affaires mondiales à une fête organisée par l'ambassade de la Russie vendredi à Ottawa. Est-ce que pour vous, c'était une erreur de participer à cette fête-là de la part d'une employée?
Tout à fait. Tout à fait. C'est une contradiction entre ce que le gouvernement a dit depuis des semaines, depuis que la Russie a envahi l'Ukraine. Mais en plus, il y a un manque de prise de responsabilité de la part du ministre. Le ministre des Affaires étrangères aurait dû dire, mais là, je suis responsable, c'est mon département. Il semble qu'elle veut un peu détourner des choses, et ça, c'est malheureux. Et surtout quand on regarde la différence entre qu'est-ce que le gouvernement dit et qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fait. depuis des semaines, je vois avec les oligarques le fait qu'ils ont permis aux oligarques, dans certains cas, d'enlever leurs atouts du Canada avant que les mesures aient été imposées. Il y a une contradiction entre qu'est-ce que le gouvernement dit et qu'est-ce que le gouvernement fait, et le ministre devrait prendre ses responsabilités à cet égard.
La ministre dit qu'elle n'était pas au courant, en fait, qu'elle a été mise au courant après les faits.
La doctrine de la responsabilité ministérielle fait en sorte qu'elle est responsable. Elle devrait l'admettre, elle devrait accepter la responsabilité, puis elle devrait faire tout pour que ça n'arrive jamais plus.
Can we get your input on that? What's your reaction to the Russia party reception and whether the government's response is adequate enough to
I think there's a massive contradiction between what the government is saying on this issue with an employee of the federal government and participating in a celebration at the Russian embassy at a time when Russia is invading and killing people in Ukraine. The fact that disturbs me the most, I think, is the refusal of the minister to take responsibility. The refusal of the minister to say, it's my department and I'm responsible. There's a doctrine of ministerial responsibility, and she needs to accept that she is responsible, and she needs to make sure that this never happens again. And I note that we have seen the same behavior by this government when it comes to Russian oligarchs. They permitted Russian oligarchs to move assets out of Canada before there were any sort of measures imposed on them. This government has to start walking the talk when it comes to standing up for Ukrainians that are living unbelievable amounts of violence and losing thousands of civilians and soldiers every day.
The minister was just here, and she said she takes responsibility and this won't happen again. So is that look closely?
That would be a step in the right direction. The initial reports didn't seem to have the minister taking responsibility. I hope in question period we'll see that reflected.
You just said that right.
Well, I hope we see that reflected in question period.
Is it a propaganda win for Russia?
Au sujet de l'obligation de porter un masque dans les transports, via rail, les avions, l'obligation de montrer son passeport vaccinal, est-ce que c'est dépassé selon vous ou c'est encore fait?
Nous on trouve, je note que chaque jour, des Canadiennes et des Canadiens sont morts de COVID. Alors, pour nous, la chose la plus importante à faire, c'est de suivre les meilleurs conseils de santé publique. Je sais que Dr. Tam est en train de regarder ça et va annoncer des choses sur peu, si je comprends bien. Pour nous, c'est l'aspect le plus important. Ça ne devrait pas être politisé. Ça devrait être quelque chose qui est vraiment une mesure qui est prise dans le sens de santé publique. Alors pour nous, on appuie les mesures de santé publique et on attend la prochaine intervention de Dr. Tom.
supply agreement, you've gone through one session now here. Do you think the Liberals are respecting it? Are they treating it appropriately? Do you feel like you're working in a proper partnership?
On confidence in supply, I think the NDP has obtained things that Canadians haven't seen for decades. I know, particularly when it comes to affordable housing, that we're in crisis right across the country. For the first time, there are investments through the budget and through the Budget Implementation Act that will make a difference in people's lives, including in my riding in New Westminster Burnaby. So I note that the dental care moving forward for children is also substantial when you think of the millions of Canadian families that have no access to dental care. I think the relationships have been cordial. I think there is a lot of work still to do, but I think the first steps have been very positive for Canadians, and we've seen from Jagmeet Singh and his leadership, he won't stop until the job is done, and he's going to keep pushing so that Canadians get the kind of supports that they need at this critical time. Coming out of COVID with huge cost of living increases, it's time now that we actually have a parliament and a government that responds to Canadians' needs. And I know that Jagmeet Singh will continue to push that.
The Liberals are pushing C11 through today. I know you're on that committee. Do you think this step is appropriate to be pushing through an important piece of legislation so quickly?
Well, I'm on the committee for C11, and it has been absolute chaos for weeks. The Conservatives have blocked everything. They blocked witnesses from appearing. So the chair of the CRTC was filibustered, rather than being able to appear and answer important questions that we were going to ask him. They refused to table amendments. All the other parties have tabled amendments. They tabled them a week and a half ago. And so when you've got Conservative chaos, our job as parliamentarians is to take legislation and hear from witnesses. We did. The overwhelming majority of witnesses support the legislation, but also witnesses were saying the legislation could be improved. And we need to move to that stage to actually have the amendments considered and voted on so we can approve that legislation. And I have no hesitation in saying the Conservatives over the last few months, their conduct in the Parliament has been reprehensible. They blocked everything. They have not been playing the role of official opposition and improving legislation. And I think this vote today is an important measure for Parliament to say, okay, the committee now has to consider the amendments and vote on them, and we hope from there that we'll actually get the improvements that we're seeking in that legislation.
Do you think this Canadian diplomat attending this event is a propaganda victory for Russia?
I think it goes without saying that when you have a Canadian diplomat or a representative of the Canadian government at an event at the Russian embassy, I am absolutely sure the Russians will see that as a victory.
Mais en même temps, est-ce que c'est pas comme ça que la diplomatie fonctionne? C'est de dialoguer avec nos ennemis, même avec des gens qui ne sont pas d'accord. Est-ce que c'est pas ça le but de la diplomatie? C'est de dire, on est en conversation, on a des échanges avec des gens avec qui on n'est pas d'accord, justement pour peut-être en arriver avec un accord.
Je constate qu'est-ce qui arrive présentement. Je constate qu'il y a des civils qui sont en train à ce moment-là d'être tués. Je constate qu'il y a un pays démocratique qui est en train d'être envahi par un dictateur. Alors, te dire, mais là, il faut dialoguer, moi, je suis pas certain. Je pense que le principe, c'est d'apporter un soutien à ces gens-là qui sont en train de dormir dans les forêts et dans les trous parce qu'il n'y a aucune autre place. Des civils qui ont perdu des membres de leur famille, des civils qui sont blessés, qui n'ont pas d'hôpital parce que les hôpitaux là, sont bombardés. Nous, on a une responsabilité comme Canadiens d'aider ces gens-là et d'envoyer un représentant du gouvernement canadien à une fête pour cette dictature, à mon avis, c'est une contradiction totale. Et ce n'est pas dans le sens que les Canadiens veulent.
English on that, is there any value in maintaining lines of communication with them?
I know that Ukrainians are dying today. They're sleeping in mud holes, they're sleeping in forests. They can't go to the hospital if they've been severely wounded because the hospitals have been destroyed. They are literally dying under the weight of bombs and artillery bombardment. It is a democratic nation that was invaded by a ruthless dictatorship. And so for Canada to send the message that hey, it's okay to be associated with that ruthless dictatorship is exactly the wrong message to send. Ukrainians are dying, and we need to stand in support of them and make sure that we're providing supports for humanitarian aid and all other types of supports that help to provide some relief for a population that is being brutalized. Thank you.
Can I get
Yes,
a reaction to the Prime Minister getting COVID for the second time, and then around the vaccine mandate, because the Conservatives have been pushing, saying, look, you're not only protected just because of the vaccine, you can still contract the virus. And so what's your reaction?
Well, first off, I wish the best to the Prime Minister and hope he recovers quickly. I think we all do. And as far as the vaccine mandates are concerned, we have to follow public health measures. We have to make sure that we are following public health. Dr. Tam will be, I believe, making some initial announcements in the coming days, and we look forward to what she has to say. But this can't be politicized. It has to be based on good public health advice. There is no doubt that vaccines limit the impact of COVID. Even if somebody can still potentially catch it, it limits the impact, and that's why vaccination is always the best choice. And that's why when I go to visit my mother in the long-term care home, I wear the mask as well to protect her and to protect other elderly patients. We all have to stand together, not politicize this, and follow the best public health advice. Thank you. Merci. Thank you.
Do you think there's a split at the Pearson building where the career Foreign Service officer cadre decided for whatever old school diplomacy to send the deputy chief of protocol to the embassy, or?
Well, my understanding is that normally there is a list of national days that departmental officials are instructed not to appear at. That list, while compiled on the recommendation of the department, is ultimately the minister's responsibility. And so I think what we had here is a failure by the minister to direct the department and ensure that the department is fully aware of the government's wishes. I might add, this is part of a bigger pattern where the minister seems to be bypassing the department and not providing proper direction to it. For example, just last week, the government announced that it was bypassing the department and establishing a committee outside the department made up of hand-picked individuals that the government has chosen in order to craft its new Indo-Pacific strategy. So clearly, there's a disconnect between the minister and the department, and ultimately that is the responsibility of the minister.
So there's no Deputy Morgan, the ADMs, they don't bear any responsibility for any of this? Or?
No, because ultimately, just like the permit approval process for the export of arms from Canada to other countries, the minister has the final responsibility for this list.
Great. Thank you for everything.
Yeah.
Good to
Thanks.
see you.
Yeah, you too.
Appreciate your stuff.
Yeah.
Cérémonie d'ambassade de la Russie.
Bien, on comprend tout d'abord qu'on n'a pas rompu nos liens diplomatiques avec la Russie, donc le dialogue est encore là. Est-ce que c'était nécessaire d'aller participer à une fête? Je pense que c'est assez insensible dans la situation actuelle quand on regarde le sort des Ukrainiens et des Ukrainiennes.
Est-ce qu'il faut garder un lien diplomatique quand même avec la Russie?
On est d'accord qu'il faut isoler la Russie sur la scène mondiale, il faut avoir des sanctions qui sont sévères, il faut qu'il y ait un prix international, un prix économique, financier à cette agression-là de l'Ukraine. Peut-être que c'est normal, par contre, de continuer d'avoir une conversation, peut-être pour leur faire entendre raison aux autres.
Où est-ce que vous croyez qu'il c'est temps de considérer à lever les mandats de vaccination pour les fonctionnaires fédéraux dans les transports au Canada?
Moi, j'ai pas d'opinion personnelle sur ce sujet-là. Je vais écouter la santé publique, la science, puis ce que disent les rapports et les études. Après ça, ben, on va s'y conformer.
Lifting vaccination mandates in travel in Canada.
So, as I stated before, we are evaluating the information that we have. Our government will continue to assess the situation and make decisions accordingly.
Is something that changed lately that makes you still assessing and analyzing the data?
The decisions to assess our decisions is always ongoing. So yes, we're always consulting experts, and whenever we feel time is right, we will adjust our measures, just like we did on the weekend for random testing.
Can you share what experts are saying about mandates instead of recommendations?
With the lowest death rate, one of the lowest death rates in the world, with one of the fastest economic recovery in the world, with a reasonable health system, with highest vaccination rate in the world, I don't feel that our government failed. I feel our government is honoring our commitment to Canadians to protect their health and safety and to protect jobs and their economy.
What about transportation?
Hi there. So I just wanted to come out because obviously, I've been following the news, but most importantly, following the passport situation at Service Canada centres around the country. And I wanted to take an opportunity to be able to address some of the questions that we've been receiving, but also those questions from you. We put out a statement today to help identify some of the actions that we've taken, for example, hiring new people, making sure that windows are open across the country with Service Canada centres, additional resources at the passport hotline, as well as simplifying some of the policy processes in place to expedite passports for Canadians, recognizing that there is an incredible volume right now as demand has been pent up, and understanding that Canadians are, frustrated by this situation. So with that, wanted to answer any questions that you have.
Do you think the whole system needs to be reformed? I mean, even with the measures you've taken, we're still hearing about 4 or 5 hour waits for people who just drop in and take a chance they can get appointments. Do you think maybe the entire system, there was a problem there before the pandemic and this has just highlighted it?
Well, I don't think the entire system needs to be reformed. I mean, the Canadian passport is, one of the most, integral and integrity-bearing documents in the world. It's very meaningful for people to have, and it's meaningful as Canadians when you travel with it. That being said, I think there are a number of things we can do to improve the process, and we are working on that internally to make sure that it is working efficiently and effectively. Let's also recall that over the last 2 years, there weren't a lot of passports that were being applied for. And so part of it is, making sure that we're back up at full capacity, both in person at a Service Canada centre, but also at processing centres, and also making sure that, people are able to do their jobs processing passports as effectively as possible. So no, we don't have to reform everything, but I think there are processes that we can improve.
I lose my credit card. I got a new one in 2 days that they sent by UPS to me, and I lose a passport, God knows how long that would take.
Well, with all due respect, I think credit cards and passports are slightly different. And, one of the issues that is causing some of the challenge is that these aren't actually simple renewals that we're looking at. So about 85% of the applications that we're receiving are for brand new passports. So it's for new Canadians, either who recently became a Canadian citizen, who were born over the past couple of years, or children getting passports for the first time. And so that takes longer than just a simple renewal, because we actually did create a new simplified renewal system for anyone who's renewing a passport that has expired within the last 15 years. But you can understand, particularly for children's passports, why we want to be careful. There are situations where we want, with regards to custody, with regards to taking a child outside of the country, that there's an extra obligation to make sure the integrity of that process. C'est une excellente question. Moi, j'aimerais que ça serait plus vite que ce que nous voyons maintenant. Mais je vais être honnête avec vous, avec les Canadiens. C'est quelque chose qui va prendre du temps. C'est pourquoi nous avons ajusté les temps sur le site web, parce que 20 jours pour les applications par courriel n'est pas possible à ce moment. Alors, nous recommandons presque 45-50 jours d'avance. Mais nous sommes en train de, comme j'ai mentionné en anglais, réviser tous les processus que nous avons justement pour faire le système plus efficace. Et nous sommes en train de mettre tous nos efforts, je suis seulement ciblée maintenant sur les passeports et pour améliorer cette situation.
Mais quand vous dites que ça va prendre du temps, donc les Canadiens et Canadiennes en ont encore pour des mois à devoir patienter des heures au bureau de passeport, c'est ce que vous me dites?
C'est pas ce que je veux, mais à ce moment, nous recevons plus d'applications chaque semaine que nous avons la capacité de process. Alors, nous sommes en train d'augmenter cette capacité de processer les passeports. C'est des mécanismes que nous avons mis en place dès l'avril pour améliorer le processus. Alors, j'espère qu'on va avoir les résultats de ces efforts plus tôt que plus tard, mais quand même, c'est la question de volume. Il y a beaucoup d'applications chaque semaine, mais quand même, c'est 1200 personnes que nous sommes en train de mettre sur le travail, aussi des ressources internes. Je peux vous dire que nous avons des personnes partout dans le pays qui travaillent les soirs, travaillent les fins de semaine pour répondre à cette demande augmentée.
So when exactly will things get back to normal, where people don't have to line up as if they're going for Rolling Stones tickets, camping outside of a passport office?
Oh gosh, believe me, I wish it was sooner rather than later. I completely understand the frustration that Canadians are facing right now. Let's be clear, passports are, a very important document. There's an integrity to the process, right, that has to be followed. As I was mentioning, I can't give you a clear timeline in terms of when things are going to, return to normal in terms of the 20-day processing. When you're in person at a passport office, 96% of passports are still being processed within 10 business days. It's the mail channel where we're really seeing challenges, and we recommend 45 days, business days at this point in terms of turnaround, and we are seeing that happen in terms of ability to deliver. But at this point, we're receiving a far greater volume in terms of applications than what we have capacity to process. However, we've been putting changes in place since April that are helping to make this process more efficient. But I can't unfortunately give you that date. What I can give you is my assurance that this is my number one priority, losing a lot of sleep over it because I know Canadians are too.
Minister, you said things could be improved. You thought improved. Can you tell us what those are?
Sure. So there are some things that are internal processes that are probably less exciting for Canadians, but things that I think can be improved are there are 300,000 new Canadian citizens every year that get their citizenship. Is there a way to get them their passports in a more efficient way than them having to make an application? We're working through this with IRCC right now. Are there other ways that we can have people apply online? Right now, it's a very manual process. Unfortunately, an online application isn't something that can happen overnight, but these are important things that we need to do. We saw throughout the pandemic, for example, that when it came to things like EI, OAS, CPP, Service Canada was very quickly able to make these changes. So we're exploring all of these things. The passport application process hasn't changed very much in many years. So I think there are ways that we can improve this for the client experience, for the citizen experience, because ultimately we want this to be a positive interaction with the Government of Canada, and so that's a top priority for me.
Beaucoup de demandes avec des reprises mémoriales, d'expiration des passeports de 10 ans. Est-ce que le gouvernement a un meilleur pouvoir à faire pour la façon dont ça a été géré?
Oui, une chose qui est importante de clarifier, c'est que le renouvellement des passeports de 10 ans n'est pas toujours l'enjeu à ce moment. Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'on va voir peut-être commençant dans l'automne, mais c'est quelque chose qui fait part de notre planification dès l'année dernière, mais à ce moment, c'est super important pour assurer. Et ces passeports qui vont être renouvelés, c'est un processus, comme j'ai mentionné, qui est plus simple parce que c'est quelqu'un qui est déjà dans le système. Alors, comme j'ai mentionné en anglais, il y a 300 000 Canadiens qui reçoivent ou qui deviennent les citoyens chaque année. Est-ce qu'il y a des manières plus efficaces de les rendre leur passeport? Alors, nous sommes en train de voir tout le système, tout le processus, justement pour assurer que les Canadiens n'expérimentent pas ce qu'ils sont en train d'expérimenter.
Qu'est-ce qui se passe actuellement? Est-ce que le gouvernement a un meilleur coup de pas à faire?
Je crois que nous aurions mieux planifié pour ça. C'était une question de ne savoir exactement pas quand cette demande aurait venir. La décision de laisser tomber les restrictions de voyage n'était pas quelque chose qui était prévisible des mois en avance. C'était quelque chose qui était pris la décision quand c'était possible. Alors, c'était toujours quelque chose que nous savions aura un impact sur le service de passeport. On a pensé qu'on a planifié justement pour ce moment, mais on n'a pas espéré la quantité de demandes qui est venue. Et l'autre chose, c'est qu'on n'a pas prévoit la quantité de nouveaux passeports. Les applicants qui font l'application pour première fois, on a pensé que ça aurait été plus de personnes qui seront en train de renouveler leur passeport.
You've always had new Canadians every year applying for passports, about the same number, maybe a slightly higher now. What is the actual increase, this pent-up demand that you're blaming the problem for? What are the actual numbers?
Yeah.
How many more people didn't apply for passports who normally would have in 2020 and 2021 but are now applying?
Sure. So I can give you the numbers that applied. So typically we get between 2.5 and 5 million applications in a normal year, right? 2.5 million is the low end, 5 million is the high end. And passports typically are very easy to plan for because you go through these cycles of knowing when they're expiring, having a certain understanding of how many new babies apply each year, right, or parents apply on behalf of new babies, and how many new citizens there are. But over the course of the pandemic, in the first year, in 2020, passports were only issued in urgent cases. So there were only about 300,000 applications. In the second year, it was 1.2 million. Right now, we're seeing between 60 and 75,000 applications a week, right? So we are on track to be at the higher end of the 5 million per year.
But not totally online with past years then.
But it's the difference between over the past 2 years, having very low numbers versus not knowing exactly when the travel restrictions were going to be lifted and making sure that we were staffed up adequately.
So a lot of people who are processing passports during that period, and now you can't handle what is a normal.
No, so no one who processes passports was laid off, but so passport officers were retained, but passport officers ended up doing more jobs than just processing passports because there wasn't enough passport work for passport officers. So now it's about making sure that we have enough people supporting passport officers so that they can focus only on passport processing.
What you said about the pent-up demand, you're saying you're now running at about the $5 million a year level, which you've had in years past. So it's obviously your department wasn't prepared. You reconfigured, you reassigned, whatever. You weren't able to handle what is a high level of volume, but not wildly out of line with past years.
Not wildly out of line with past years pre-pandemic, but to ramp up from where we were in the pandemic, right? And I think, as I explained in French, that we were planning for a surge, right? And we did. We hired 600 additional staff since January, recognizing that we were going to be seeing the surge. What was different in past years is that the 2.5 to 5 million kind of happened pretty consistently throughout the year, right? What we're seeing is that instead of that kind of flow throughout 12 months, we're seeing kind of that flood kind of happening at the same time. And so while we are and are ramping up to have sufficient capacity, we don't have capacity to deal with 5 million at the same time, right? Not that we got 5 million at the same time, but this is where the challenge is, right? Is that we've typically been able to manage that volume throughout the year, but we're seeing the surge happen all at the same time, which of course is leading to long lineups both at passport offices and on the phone. And so all of that to say is that, I've traveled all across the country, been to Service Canada, spoken to people in line to understand what their experience has been. I've spoken with frontline Service Canada folks who are working so hard to serve people, but really asking them, what can we do here in Ottawa to make their lives easier? And that's what we've been trying to do and adjust as needed. And just to really reiterate and reassure Canadians that this is the number one issue that I have been and will continue to be focused on, because we want to get this back to a better place.
This is not your department, but the COVID Alert app reportedly being scrapped this week by the federal government. But the government has often said in the House of Commons, COVID's not over yet, the pandemic's not over. So why would the government be getting rid of the notification app that is supposed to help people be alerted about the spread of COVID?
It's a great question, and you're right, it's not my department. The only thing that I could possibly say, and it clearly is not over, we know of many people who have tested positive for COVID even today, but I think part of it is how many people are currently using the app, and so is it something that Canadians are continuing to use? I think it had a really important moment in time, particularly right at the beginning of the pandemic when there was a lot of uncertainty, but perhaps the usefulness of it at this point in time is not as great.
Do you have it on your phone?
I do have it on my phone.
Still active?
Yes, I have it on all my phones, actually.
Ever gotten an alert from it?
I do not believe that I have gotten an alert from it, because if I had, I probably would have isolated, so I didn't. Okay, anyways, I have to go. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Think about getting a border with the Danes on Hans Island. What do you think?
Amazing. I think it's amazing. I'm a big Borgen watcher. You watching Borgen?
Absolutely.
Like new season out.
Yeah, it's all about Greenland.
So. Oh my God! And oil, and native rights.
So, are you as a member
Borgen watcher?
From Newfoundland, Labrador. And, Hans Island's just up the Labrador Strait there.
It's not just up, it's quite a friggin' distance, but anyway. Yeah, it's a little Baffin Island-y more than Labrador. But yes, okay, we'll extend it.
Okay.
Yeah, what about it?
We're just trying to get enough
stability. I think stability. Yeah. Wherever you can find stability. Danes are our friends. It's just find some surety and stability. I'm all about that.
Perfect.
See you, gentlemen. Yeah.
Mr. Murray, Hans Island? Want to talk to Hans Island?
Persistent.
I think we're asking the same question here. Just, is it time to relook at the vaccine mandate for federal public servants?
Follow the science, follow the advice. Follow the science, follow the advice. Follow the science, follow the advice.
The labor issues we are seeing nationwide.
Big time. Yeah. No. I talk to workers all the time, so follow the science, follow the advice, watch the space.
Just wondering, what can you tell us about the negotiations to bring Hans Island together? Was this a message to Russia for Denmark and Canada to come together and say we can solve something?
I think it's an indication of the strong partnership and friendship that we have with Denmark, and this was a way to move forward in a collaborative way. So
I've dealt with the story for a decade, it seems
Yeah.
like. To actually have it rectified now, was Russia part of the impetus to get both sides to just come to a
This
deal?
is about Canada and Denmark.
What do you make of the deal with Denmark over this piece of
Well,
rock?
I think it's very positive, given our world situation today. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow for the official signing. But this is a positive initiative worldwide.
Do you get to go up there?
I believe I'll be at the ceremony. I'm not sure what the run of show is yet, but I'll be there.
And I produced TV items about this, and I think about 2006, when it looked like we were not going to go to war with another NATO member, but it seemed there was a real discrepancy. Why does it take this long, do you think, to make a deal over such a small piece of rock?
Yeah, you know what? Obviously, I wish I could answer that. I know discussions have been going on for a long time, but the important part is that the deal got done, and we are going to have the signing tomorrow.
Okay.
Good.
Is there anything else that...
Thank you.
think it's time for vaccine mandates for public servants and interim sports in Canada?
Listen, we're following the science, and we're working with Dr. Tam through various ministries. Thank you.
It appears we have a deal with Denmark.
Yep.
Do you think the specter of the Russian bear moved the two sides together? What do you take about this deal?
Well, I think it's a demonstration of how countries who are upstanding members of our international system can work together to settle disputes around international boundaries. And so, kudos to both governments for coming to a resolution on this issue.
I'm just going to film a cutaway at the same time, so I've been trying to do double duty here. I mean, it did take 10 years. Like, I remember filing on this, and we were all trying to learn about this little tiny rock. Was it worth it?
Absolutely. It's clarification of an international boundary. Few things are more sacrosanct in maintaining international order than ensuring that we respect each other's international boundaries. And so, I think it's a good thing that both the Canadian and Danish governments came to this agreement.
And finally, do you think it's just going to be a trivia question? What two countries have land borders with Canada? Or
no, I think these while the island is obviously quite small, it has a huge impact on submarinal rights, and so I think these are pretty important matters, despite the fact we're talking about a very small island.
So mining, undersea bed
That's
oil,
right. Fishing rights, mining rights, and those sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything I missed?
I think I think the final thing is it's a good contrast with how Russia has conducted itself and simply invaded another country. Good standing members of the international system don't do that, and that's why we have to take such a strong stand against Russia's aggression in Ukraine.
Well, it's always good when we're working with our allies, but one of the things that I was thinking is maybe this means we can get into Eurovision now.
Do you think there was an impetus because of Russia for Denmark and Canada to finally settle this? Because I've been covering this for like 10 years.
I think that, frankly, we're going to be seeing more work around the Arctic, and the Arctic border countries have an obligation to work together, and this is just one of those indications that shows that we're doing that.
Hans Island, it's a great sign that two allies can work together to solve disputes as we see what's happening in Europe. It's going to be an interesting piece of trivia with Canadians to know that they have both the longest and shortest undefended land borders in the world. So, thank you.
What do you make of this whole deal that the Irvings want $300 million to redo a brand new shipyard that they got lots of money to do the first place?
Well, the first thing that I would say is the national shipbuilding strategy is important to Canada. The economic benefits since that strategy began is over $20 billion. And that includes, of course, maintaining and creating over 17,000 jobs a year annually. And I had the honor of visiting both shipyards that's going on there and talking to the workers on the floor. And so I think it's important that we recognize the importance of this strategy and, of course, providing the vessels for the Coast Guard and for the Navy that they need. With respect to moving forward, we know that there have been challenges. COVID has presented challenges, labor issues have arisen, supply chain issues, and so we are always working very closely with our partners in the National Shipbuilding Strategy to to try and mitigate any challenges. But with respect to specifics that are going on in discussions, I can't comment on that.
I mean, by my count, we still have 3 more slush breakers to go at least for the Coast Guard and the Navy, and the Irvings are demanding 300 mils. So
well, I'm not going to confirm what you've just said in terms of the demand. What I am going to say is that we are going to work very closely with our partners and help them, of course, to face the challenges by understanding the challenges, by monitoring the timelines and the budgets on a regular basis. And, the challenges are real and timelines have been impacted, and we have to look at how that is going to impact down the road. But at the same time, to say we want to work together. I'm really proud of the work that Canadians are doing at these shipyards, and we want to continue to work together to provide the vessels that are required by both the Navy and the Coast Guard.
And do you have confidence right now in the Type 26 design?
Well, that's not for me, right? DND is the lead on that. What I am, as Minister of Procurement, is responsible for ensuring that those ships are procured in a way that's responsible, and that's where I'm going to focus my attention.
Final question: the replacement for the Polaris Airbus. I saw one flying overhead just about an hour ago.
Yeah.
When do you think we'll get the replacement Airbuses?
I'll have more to say on that in very near future.
Sorry.
Thank you. Thanks.
This show has been produced by Depictions Media. Please contact us at depictions.media for more information.